Hello again, and welcome to another part about writing overview in IELTS Task 1 academic writing. In our previous part, we worked on overview in trend graphs, and we learned how to write a very good overview paragraph in our report. And in this session, I'm going to teach you how to write overview in comparative graphs. So we have worked on comparative graphs, the differences between comparative and trend graphs, right? So you know that in trend graphs, the data is provided during a time period, for example, from this date up to this date. However, in comparative graphs, the graph compares data about different categories. So we do not have any date in comparative graphs. Now let's start our overview with a bar chart. So here's, as you can see on your screen, here's an example of bar chart, expenditure and computer goods by Friends in UK in 2010. So in horizontal line, there are some categories like cars, computers, books, perfume, and cameras. What we are going to do here is that we'll start with the most and the least. So the most was in both countries was cars, all right? For example, in France, because we are not going to provide any specific data or numeric details, so we only mentioned the highest point. So the highest category, the highest expenditure was on cars in both countries, and the lowest in France was cameras, and in the UK was perfume. So we mentioned this general information. So we'll start with the most the leading consumer product in both countries. On the whole, we learned in our previous session that starting an overview paragraph, we can use some words like generally, in general, right? On the whole is another phrase that you can use. On the whole, comma, cars dominated as the leading consumer product in both the UK and France in the given period. So we wrote one sentence about the leading consumer product in both countries. Now let's write about the least, right? Additionally, perfume and cameras occupied the bottommost positions. We wrote this phrase in our previous session too, and I told you that this is a very good phrase that you can write when you're talking about the highest point or the highest data or the least leading category, right? So additionally, perfume and cameras occupied the bottommost positions in the UK and France respectively. And we also worked on the adverb respectively too in our previous session. That's it. Very simple, right? So you just mention the leading and the least leading category if it is about two countries, so you can write about two countries, all right? So that's it for a bar chart. Now let's turn to another chart, and it's table. So as you can see, here's an example of table, comparative table, that it's in 5 countries, Ireland, Italy, Spain, Sweden, and Turkey. And there are 3 categories: food, drinks, tobacco, clothing, footwear, and leisure and education. So the highest point is Turkey in food and drinks. And the lowest point in food and drinks is Sweden, all right? Again, the highest point in clothing and footwear is Italy, and the lowest again is Sweden. And the highest in leisure and education is again Turkey. and the lowest is Spain. So we'll start with the highest in the category food, drinks, and tobacco, all right? So in brief, this is another phrase that you can start your overview paragraph. In brief, Turkey had the highest spending on food, drinks, and tobacco, comma, whereas, now because you are saying something that is totally opposite to the previous one, so you talked about the leading and you're talking about the least leading, so you're right, you use whereas here, right? Whereas Sweden spent the least on these items. All right, so we talked about food, drinks, and tobacco. Now, let's talk about clothing and footwear. The leading country is Italy and the least is Sweden. So we can write like this. In the clothing and footwear category, Italy took the lead. So it took the lead. It was the leading country, while Sweden occupied the last spot. So bottommost position and to occupy the last spot, these have the same meaning. So when you want to talk about something that is the least leading, you can use this phrase too. Occupied the last spot. Now let's write about leisure and education. The highest was Turkey and the lowest was Spain. Finally, the Turkish population made the most significant investment in education and leisure, whereas the Spanish invested the least. So because, in my opinion, spending on leisure and education is a kind of investment, right? So I use this phrase, made the most significant investment in leisure and education. So this is what we mean by a good overview paragraph. So in comparative charts, we mention the lowest and the least, right? So if there are 5 countries, you can write about categories and saying that, for example, in this category, the leading was this country and the least leading was this country. If the categories there are too many categories, so you can simply write about the least or the highest point and the lowest point, all right? Now, let's turn to another chart. And here, as you can see on your screen, this is a pie chart. And we worked on this pie chart, right? It's about Australian household energy use and the gas emissions that result from this consumption of or using energy. So again here, we should write about the highest and the lowest point. So in Australian household energy use, as you can see, it is highlighted that heating was the leading, right? Heating was, or the most, or we can say that Australians utilize the most energy in heating, while cooling was the least, all right? And the gas emissions, the highest was water heating, and the lowest was cooling. So we can write about this data. So we start our overview like this. In general, Australian residents utilize the most energy in heating while emitting the most substantial amount of greenhouse gas via water heating. So the most energy is heating, and the substantial amount of gas emissions is about water heating. Now let's talk about the least energy consumption. On the other hand, cooling expends the least amount of energy, cooling was the least, and also produces the least greenhouse emissions. So energy consumption, cooling was the least, and let's say greenhouse gas emissions that result from this use, again, cooling is the least. So we can write the sentence like this. On the other hand, cooling expends the least amount of energy and also produces the least greenhouse emissions. Now, as you remember, in comparative graphs, we had mixed charts, right? Or the mixture of, let's say, bar chart, pie chart with table, or okay. Now, as you can see on your screen, this is a mixed chart. It is a mixture of pie chart and table. And remember that in this type of charts, our overview sentence can be a little long, so don't try to write more, right? You can write, let's say, in summary, right? If you think that your paragraph, your overview paragraph is going to be too long, you can cross some information out. So we'll see here in this type of mixed chart we have. All right, so in the pie chart, as you can see, it is the cause of worldwide land degradation. So the most leading, or the leading cause of global degradation or land deterioration was overgrazing, and the least was other factors. All right, so that's it about pie chart. And by region, the lowest was North America, while Europe was the leading cause. It was 23%. So we're not going to provide specific data. We're not going to write about percentages here. As you know, that in overview paragraph, no data is provided, only general information. So about the pie chart, in brief, overgrazing of land is the leading cause of global land deterioration, while unspecified reasons, or let's say other factors, you can also write, account for the lowest amount of land decay. So we wrote about the pie chart. Now we are going to write about the two nations that cause land degradation, or the two regions. Furthermore, Europe has experienced the most significant amount of total land degradation, whereas North America has suffered the least. And this is our second sentence about cause of land degradation by regions. All right, that's it. We worked on 4 comparative charts, and you got to know how to write overview paragraph in this type of chart. Our next part will be about process diagrams and maps, and how to write overview paragraph in these 2 types of, let's say, task 1 questions. I hope you've enjoyed this part and has been really helpful to you. If you have any questions, I would really appreciate it if you write your questions in the comments, and I will kindly answer all your questions. Until next time, and another overview paragraph. Enjoy your time, stay tuned, and goodbye.